Hi everyone, it's Scott Allen. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Let's Talk Rugby. We're brought to you by theraw.com.au. Today we're going to talk about the Queensland Reds' preparation for Super Rugby in 2014, have a look at the Wallabies match last week against Scotland. Of course, if we're talking rugby, we need to have a quick look at that fabulous Ireland All Blacks match from the weekend, and then we'll look forward to the Wallabies' last match of their end-of-year tour against Wales this weekend. Joining me on the panel today to help get through all of that is Queensland Reds head coach Richard Graham. G'day mate, how are you?
Hey Scotty, how you doing, mate?
Great, good to have you on.
Thank you. I'm a first timer on the Raw, so mate, it's good to be here.
And mate, you must be busy at the moment into pre-season full swing.
Yeah, week 8 of pre-season, so the boys are training well. I've been really happy with their application, their work ethic, and I think we're making some good gains both on and off the field.
And so obviously this year there's been a number of changes at the Reds, particularly with the coaching staff. Can you just take us through what those changes are?
Yeah, well, clearly Ewan has gone to the national job as the head coach there, and with him he's taken Jimmy Mackay, who led the attack for the last 4 seasons. So they're the two significant changes in terms of the coaching staff. So the changes that I've made there, I'll remain as the defence coach, but having brought in Nick Stiles to coach the forwards. And I know Nick from having played with him, but also employ him at the Western Force, where he did an outstanding job with the forwards. And Steve Meehan's coaching the attack. And Steve's history is Stade Francais in France, Bath in the UK Premiership, and more recently at the Western Force himself. So really happy with the staff that I've brought in. And I think, as I say, we've made some really good gains. Nick, as I say, I employed at the Western Force, and I thought he created a real pack mentality, and technically the forwards really efficient. Steve, whilst he's coached at Bath and at the Western Force, 2 of the clubs that I've coached at, we've never coached together. It's always been at a different time, and Steve's certainly a proud Queenslander, having grown up at Ashgrove and a good rugby family, and I thought he was an obvious choice at the end of the day.
And he had a reputation when he was at Bath for really encouraging some really attacking rugby, so probably fits quite well with the organisation.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time together talking before I appointed Steve, and his philosophies align with my philosophies, but also very strongly with how Queensland have played over the last number of years, and certainly with the quality of football that we've got. So I'm really looking forward to that aspect of our game continuing to evolve. And, certainly innovation has been one of the key words associated with Queensland Rugby, their attack over the last couple of years. And, I'd like to see that continue.
And on the playing squad itself, there have been a number of guys move on, probably most notably Digby Ioane, Radiki Samo, Adam Wallace-Harrison has retired. Can you just tell us about those movements and who you've brought in?
Yeah, so eight guys have changed in the program. So our highest profile imports Lockie Turner, and Lockie, would need no introduction to the rugby public. So Lockie, by the age of 24, had played 69 games for that other team dressed in blue. Also played 15 tests. By the age of 24, also played something like 65 consecutive games for the Waratahs. So, real quality with Lockie. The others, I've recognised a lot of the local talent. 2 of the boys from Jeeps in Chris Kuradrani and Samu Karevi, who played very, very well in the local competition. And I think in time will play very, very well at Super Rugby level.
Yeah, I was just going to say to you, that's a real feature of the players that have come in, is that it's a lot of the local, younger talent. And that seems to, again, fit within the philosophy of what you're trying to build and the stamp you're trying to put on the Reds.
Yeah, a lot of these guys have grown up supporting the Reds, ambitious to be part of the Reds program. And it's good to see that there's a lot of talent within the local competition that can flow through into the Reds program. And as I say, not only play well for Super Rugby, but the whole thing about playing for Queensland is then that ability to go on and play for the Wallabies.
And so your lead into the season, I know you've already announced that you're having a trial match against the Chiefs. That's up in Toowoomba. When's that happening?
So that's February the 8th. So it's a Saturday night. And Scotty, as you know, mate, the season these days starts early, and certainly for the guys that we've just been talking about, finishes late. So the preparation for this group at the moment is really important, and then the integration in bringing back the Wallabies, the timing of when you bring them back, how you bring them back, to give them not only a really good lead in physically, but now that we've changed the staff and changed some of the way that we want to play the game, it's going to be important to integrate those blokes well. So yeah, not a lot of lead in, but really looking forward to that game against the Chiefs. They'll have played the World Club Challenge, so the winners of the Heineken Cup in Toulon, winners of Super Rugby last year in the Chiefs. So they'll have had a good game, high quality game, good opposition for us leading into Super Rugby.
Now, talking Wallabies, you must be absolutely thrilled with the performance of a number of the Reds players on tour at the moment, particularly Quade Cooper.
Yeah, outstanding to see. Outstanding to see. I think the one thing about the Wallabies is, it hasn't been smooth sailing this year, but I think going to the game against the All Blacks in Dunedin before they went on this tour, you really started to see signs of what they were trying to achieve. And, whilst people would argue that you haven't seen it consistently for 80 minutes, there have certainly been strong periods in games that have demonstrated the way that they've wanted to play. And I think the strongest evidence of that was the game against Ireland, where it was a pretty consistent performance. And the game against Scotland, unfortunately, I think the weather conditions there didn't allow the game to flow. I thought the refereeing at times was quite pedantic there as well. But generally speaking, I think there's some really good signs for the Wallabies.
Yeah, and that combination with Will and Quade, it seems to be improving again every week.
Yeah, look, I think they're two world-class players. Will, people have got to remember, came back from a knee reconstruction. So hurt himself in October last year. The best recovery from anyone, the most diligent, the most disciplined recovery of anyone I've ever seen. Led back into Super Rugby, straight into a Lion series. And I think probably for Will was just mentally fatigued. And I think having freshened up a little bit, you're now starting to see that through his performances on the field, some really good performances. I think with Quade, again, Quade had come back from a knee reconstruction, then had another operation on his knee, and has had a really big year with the number of games he's played. I really think he's at his best at the moment. I think he's outstanding. His relationship with Folau, also a really good thing for Australian rugby.
Yeah, and so we're going to see some of that with Lockie Turner, no doubt.
Oh, look, I'd like to see that with Turner. Shipley, having had a reconstruction now on his shoulder, now back physically to his best. Aiden Tua's performances in pre-season have been really, really good. And for a guy that hasn't played a lot of rugby over the last few years, and will go into this season with a lot of confidence. So, Sortia, having come back from a Wallaby tour, again, will be a guy full of confidence. So some really good signs there for Queensland Rugby.
Yeah, and if we talk some of the forwards, I think James Horwell has responded tremendously to the change in leadership, starting to play really well. But the guy that's impressed me most from out of your squad, Rob Simmons, has really started to step up to international rugby, I think.
Yeah, and I think you've got to remember when you talk about some of those guys that Rob's been around for a long time. Rob's only 23. So, still relatively young in terms of type forwards. But I think Rob's starting to understand his core role as a type forward. I think he's performing that really well, and he'll get better and better. The other guy that impresses me is Slipper. 23-year-old tight head, about to play 50 tests. Shortly, he's just played 50 games for Queensland. World class as a tight head, absolutely world class.
Absolutely. It's easy to forget those guys are only 23, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they've been around for a long time. I think both of those boys may have made their Wallaby debut when I was with the Wallabies in 2010. So, now been around for about 4 seasons with the Wallabies, it's still only 23.
And I thought that the Wallabies pretty much controlled Scotland throughout the match. I don't think the score really reflected the true position of the game. Obviously, 2 tries to 0. The Scots kicked 5 penalty goals, and the Wallabies did concede 13 penalties. I must admit, at first, I thought that they'd been pretty poor with their discipline. when I went back and looked at those penalties, there were a number there that I think on any other given day another referee may not have given. As you said, the refereeing might have been a little bit pedantic, but the Wallabies controlled the game pretty well. Obviously, Christian Leali'ifano didn't have a good night with the boot, only kicking 4 out of 9. If he'd kicked more of those, the score would have looked more comfortable. I know there's been some comment that the captain or the coach should have taken the kicking duties off Leali'ifano as things weren't going so well, but I made the comment today in response to a question on the Raw that, when Christian Leali'ifano kicked a long-range penalty from out near the touchline in the 51st minute, he kicked that ball really well, and that took him to 4 out of 6. So at that stage, his kicking performance was pretty good. He struck that ball really well. So it was only the last 3 kicks where there was any issue. The third last kick of the night, he struck really well, but it hit the upright. So there's certainly no sign at that stage that a change needed to be made. Second last kick, he didn't hit that one as well, but I don't think you change your kicker based on one kick alone. It was only the final kick, which came in the 75th minute, where he didn't strike it well and his body language after the kick wasn't good. So I can see that that's a point where you would change the kicker, but the Wallabies didn't get another kick at goal, so we'll never know whether the change was to be made. Overall the performance in terms of the numbers wasn't good, but the goal-kicking performance I didn't think was that bad. It's just one of those nights. I could also see some improvement in the defensive structures. I did point out in my article on the Raw today some lapses around the ruck defence where players just weren't getting into the guard position, and Scotland took advantage by running plays down the side of the ruck. That's a mental issue to me. That's not a technical issue. It's just players aren't alert enough to actually make sure that there's someone in position every ruck. Richard, how did you think the Wallabies performed overall, particularly given that they'd had such a disrupted week?
Outstandingly well. That sort of backs against the wall, isn't it? A lot of disruption, circle the wagons, stay really focused as a group. I thought they performed really well, and there are still signs of how their game is evolving. I think their defence is getting better, and that's evident. And I think the framework, or their attacking framework, there's a lot of clarity now around that, and guys are confident in their roles. I did think, mate, as I said before, I thought the conditions underfoot were terrible, and I'm not sure why, given the amount of money that is spent on those stadiums, that the drainage isn't better. I can't understand that. Millennium Stadium at the moment looks terrible as well. But yeah, I thought a really good performance overall.
Yeah, so you can actually notice, rather than just, the scrums, obviously the ground was ripping up, but players, when they were running and trying to change direction, you could even see their feet moving then, couldn't you?
Yeah, you could. And a lot of it comes back to the footwear. You can blame a guy in Australia if he slips over because he probably hasn't got the right footwear. There on Saturday in Scotland at Murrayfield, and also watching that game that you just talked about, it's difficult to blame the players for footwear because they'd go into that with long studs and prepared, yet still that doesn't quite seem to be good enough for their footing.
Yeah. And mate, as a coach in that situation, you've been on those end-of-year tours. Do you get involved with the players in trying to tell them what type of footwear to wear?
Yeah, you do. Absolutely. The one thing going into any sporting event, you don't leave things to chance. And that's a theme that you continue to push. Preparation, there's a couple of things that you can control. You can control your attitude and you can control your preparation. And, that's part of that preparation, all those little smaller detail like your footwear, size of your studs and all those sorts of things. So, you'd like to think that players at that level understand the significance, and that one slip could cause a missed tackle that leads to a try and so forth. But it's certainly part of your preparation during the week.
Now, just before we finish up on last week, if you haven't already seen the match between Ireland and the All Blacks, it's well worth trying to find a replay. It was a great effort by Ireland. They jumped out to a 19-0 lead after about 20 minutes, and they were still leading 22-17 when time was up on the clock. But the All Blacks never say die. Here's what happened after time was up.
And on come the little charges by the replacements. Kevin McLaughlin this time. Penalty to New Zealand.
17, straight off your feet.
17. Jack McGrath penalised. 20 seconds to go. Aaron Smith takes it quickly. Ben Smith, one last defensive set to go through.
Eyes about boys now. Eyes about everything.
Cruden, Kieran Reid. Back to Cruden. Bowden Barrett hurled to the ground. Luke Fitzgerald. Sam Whitelock. We're into the red zone. 80 minutes is up on the clock. Ma'a Nonu. Ben Smith. Conor Murray still making his tackles. Owen Franks to brother Ben. Cruden. They're queuing up out here. Kieran Reid, Gordon Darcy, Ben Smith, Sean O'Brien and Rob Carney bring him down. Away comes Nonu. Crotty with the ball. Cruden, Franks. Aaron Smith to Cruden. Sanea. New Zealand so close to keeping their 100%. You're alive, Ma'a Nonu. Gordon Darcy brings him down. Ireland slow up release. Cruden. Dane Coles gets the pass away. It's going to be the try for Ryan. We may have to wait. Did Ireland charge too soon? He might have another go at it. Oh.
Well, the law is this: they can't start moving until he starts moving. Get on your mark.
Well, that's the second time that's happened today. Aaron Cruden takes a little half step back to settle his feet before he makes his run up.
And this time Ireland cannot charge.
Stay. And this time they won't be allowed to.
And he's already had a sighter, so it's that bit easier for him. He's pushed the last one, so he's going to make a correction this time.
A second bite at the kick. Aaron Cruden to take the All Blacks into the history books and deny Ireland. Second time he gets it right, and New Zealand have won what has to be one of the most pulsating games of rugby union we'll ever have the privilege of watching. It was a fantastic game of rugby, and New Zealand have won it by the slenderest of margins. They have beaten Ireland by 24 points to 22.
Now on to the Wallabies match against Wales, and just like the All Blacks scoring a try at the death to beat Ireland, last year it was the Wallabies who scored a try right at the death to beat Wales. That victory was the 8th in a row for the Wallabies. In fact, Wales haven't beaten the Wallabies since 2008, and of the 20 matches in the professional era, the Wallabies have won 17 with one draw. Now, of course, 10 of the players lining up against the Wallabies this week were in the British and Irish Lions squad that beat the Wallabies earlier this year, and the Welsh head coach, Warren Gatland, was the Lions head coach. So that may give them some confidence heading into this match, but they are without Adam Jones at tight head and both of their centres, Jamie Roberts and Jonathan Davis. In a bit of a boost for Wales, Lee Halfpenny, George North and Alex Cuthbert will all start in this match. I'm sure the Wallabies will be focusing more on their recent record against Wales than any Welsh connection with the Lions. But you'd also think they'd take some confidence into the match from the fact they've won 3 in a row and are starting to gel as a unit. Wales come into this match on the back of 3 matches against South Africa, Argentina and Tonga. They performed reasonably well against South Africa, had a comfortable victory over Argentina, and then in the match against Tonga there were a large number of players rested, so it's hard to gauge the performance of what this team will be. Richard, I guess one of the challenges for you and Mackenzie this week is selection. Having suspended a number of players for a week, the players that came in performed reasonably well. Does that mean that they should have first crack at retaining those positions, or is he really got to wipe the slate clean and select the best possible side he can.
Yeah, I think there's a combination, mate. I think, yeah, you pick your best team. So, if I were in that situation, the boys have been punished. So now clean slate and we move forward. Everyone's very clear of the expectation. If, however, I think a guy has put his hand up and played exceptionally well in that game, then he needs due consideration. If Ewan or Jimmy or the coaching staff there believe that's the case, I'm sure you'll see that player rewarded. That's been evident here in Ewan's selection over the past 4 years, that form is the key contributor.
Now, I've got some footage up of Wales playing South Africa and Tonga on the screen. One of the things that interested me was there was a lot of cross-field kicking, as you can see here, out to their wingers, and it's a tactic that I think we might see a bit of this week. With the Wallabies having played Wales so many times in the last few years, they'll have a pretty good understanding of how Wales play. Obviously, the Welsh game plan, which we've referred to as Warren ball, is largely built on the punch that Jamie Roberts gave them in midfield. Without him there and without Davis there as well, they're not going to be able to play exactly the same way. But I doubt they'll be changing too much. The Australian scrum's been performing much better over the last few weeks, particularly with Sekope Kepu starting at tight head. But the fact that Adam Jones isn't starting for Wales will also help the scrum. I think the Wallabies line-out will be very competitive, if not dominant. And it's fairly obvious that the Welsh will try to get the ball as much as possible to the back three that I've already mentioned of Halfpenny, North and Cuthbert. The Wallabies will have to be particularly careful to shut down counter-attack from those three. So if they're kicking, they need to be very accurate. Either make the kick contestable, don't kick it too deep, so you drag those back three forward, so when they catch the ball they've got players around them, rather than giving them space to catch the ball, then build up some rhythm and work together. Or put the ball out. Let's contest their line out. And then if we turn our attention to what the Wallabies have got to do, I don't see the Wallabies need to change too much. They've been trying to play this expansive game plan, and when they do, it works. I think the matches on tour, they look pretty good in large patches. They could certainly be more consistent. I think the one match where they didn't look as good was the second half of the English match, where I thought they came out after half-time with a preordained plan to play more conservatively, kick more, and it just doesn't seem to suit the attacking style of this team at the moment. Richard, what did you think?
Look, no, I agree with you, mate. I think that was noticeable. Subconsciously, maybe psychologically, they're thinking, we've lost a lot of games this year. We've got ourselves to a position where we're in front. We just need to hold on. Generally, you don't win at that level if that's your mentality. You can understand maybe why that crept in, but at the same time, I think now they're starting to understand if they're going to win, then they need to play. And they need to play, old cliche, but they need to play for the full 80 minutes.
Yeah, well, we saw what happened last year, didn't we, when the Wallabies played Wales at Millennium Stadium and we won the game in the last 10 seconds with that Kurtley Beale try.
Yeah. Well, if you need reminding, that's there for them all to see. But I think the other thing is, I didn't see the Irish All Blacks game, but I saw the highlights, and 15 points down, and the All Blacks come back and win that after the hooter. So again, that's been highlighted in the last 7 days.
That performance and the mental strength that the All Blacks showed, maybe a little bit more than mental strength, the confidence they had, there was almost an inevitability that despite the fact they were behind, despite the fact that they were 60 metres away from the try line, they were going to find a way to score and win that match.
Well, you have to think about the mental pressure. So your point there about the confidence and the self-belief, I agree with strongly. And then you've got Sexton in about the 76th minute, got a penalty to win it. So, does he mentally feel under that much pressure to kick the goal? If he kicks it, they win. There's no doubt about that. He misses that penalty, and the All Blacks then go on to win the game. So, it's all part of that performance. The mental pressure is extraordinary.
Yeah, and that's something that lots of professional teams are now finding that to be a real edge. Do you guys at the Reds have somebody on board who looks after the mental side of the game?
No, we don't. We don't use anyone. If individuals want to use someone, then we support them with that. But we don't have anyone here full time. Certainly my thinking surrounding that is you need someone with the group full time to have an impact so that you understand the players, they understand the environment the players are working in, they can see what the coaches are trying to achieve. I think if you've got someone that's full time with the group, they can make some good results. I think bringing people in on a ad hoc basis where they don't understand what the outcomes are you're trying to achieve and so forth, I think it's difficult to gain the trust and respect of the playing group. So tend not to go down that pathway.
Richard, have you had a chance to see any of the Welsh games this year?
Yeah, I have. I have watched them. I think on the back of the Lions series, I've got no doubt the Welsh will be talking and trying to draw parallels. But at the end of the day, they're two very separate teams, two very, very separate events. I actually think the Wallabies go there with a lot of confidence. They go there with confidence in that they'll be able to see that their game is improving. I think they'll go there with confidence on the back of the adversity that was surrounding them last week, yet they're still able to manage a win and still in areas of their game improve. So I expect them to go there and finish the season strongly and get a win.
Mate, I share your views. I think they will be reasonably confident going into this match. I think generally they've got better during the tour. They've improved in some key areas. It's a shame they didn't win that match against England, obviously, because they could have been playing for a Grand Slam, but then again, there's no point in dealing in hypotheticals as to what might have happened. I think if the team has pulled together after the distractions of the suspensions and they can beat Wales to rack up their fourth win in a row, and that'd make it 9 in a row against Wales, then there'll be a real positive feeling out of this tour and give them some momentum going into 2014, obviously when some other key players that are injured come back to bolster the ranks. But it's certainly, I think this tour has showed that we've got more depth than we thought we had. All right, Richard, well, thanks for coming on today. Great to get your insight, and good luck for next year. We'll try and talk to you as the season gets closer.
Fantastic. Thanks, Scotty. Appreciate it.
Thanks to all of you for joining us in this episode of Let's Talk Rugby. We'll be back for the final show of 2013 next week, where we'll do a bit of a review of the year for the Wallabies and talk about some of the issues in Australian rugby, and I'll get a number of people from the Raw on to give their views. Enjoy the match against Wales. We'll talk to you next week.